Well, hello, everyone. I would like to officially welcome you to the Brain 20th Anniversary Technology Spotlight special presentation featuring the one and only inventor of the brain, Harlan Hugh. My name is Shelley Hayduck, and I'm co-hosting today's webinar with Matt Caton, our Director of Customer Solutions.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today.
And of course, some of you may or may not know, I'd also like to introduce you to Harlan Hugh. Harlan Hugh is the CTO, CEO, and the key inventor behind TheBrain. And he's going to take us through a number of his favorite features on the Brain 9. We're celebrating a lot today. It's 2 decades of innovation where we've helped people expand and connect their information and their universe of digital content. So it's a celebration for us, but I want to say it's also a celebration for you. And that's why earlier this week, we also gave away commemorative wallpapers. We've had a lot of fun activities, and we want to keep this webinar very interactive and fun. So Harlan's going to start off with a nod to the future with some of 20 of his favorite features in the Brain 9, and then we're going to jump into Q&A. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Harlan, and I'm looking forward to seeing your brain, Harlan.
Okay, great. Thank you, Shelley. So I've just shared my screen. Hopefully everyone can see it now.
Looks good.
And, okay, great. Thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to talk to you all today on the 20th anniversary of TheBrain. And just to give you a little background, it was over 20 years ago now that I started working on TheBrain. And I created TheBrain because I believe that your computer should not just be a tool like your desk or a filing cabinet simply for storing information. It should really be a space for thinking, a limitless way to express yourself and capture your knowledge. Ideally, the brain should function as an extension of your mind and let you focus on what you do best. After 20 years, this vision has been realized in its most compelling form ever. Today, we have native clients for the brain in 4 different platforms, plus a web client. So whether you're on Windows, Mac OS, or even a mobile device, there's a powerful version of the brain for you. We've been working on version 9 for over 5 years now, and we've built thousands of features and capabilities. Today, I'm excited to share with you 20 of my personal favorites. These are things that I find useful all the time. Some of them are perhaps a little less obvious, and I hope that even veteran users can learn a trick or two today. So, as you can see, this is my brain, and I've got everything I do in it, whether it's the business or other aspects of my business life, as well as hobbies, personal information. Everything is in here. And of course, I have my current projects in here, including today's talk. So the first trick I'm going to show you is something really simple. When I double click on the background, you can see that the content area appears. And if I double click on the content area, it takes over the entire screen. This is a nice little feature that will let you reorient your workspace very quickly. And it's something that you can take advantage of by going into the preferences and turning on maximize on double click. This is a feature that's disabled by default because we don't want to confuse new users if they double click by accident. But if you know what you're doing, it's something that we will find that you use all the time. One of the headline features in the Brain 9 are content tabs or brain tabs. And everyone knows that you can open multiple tabs and open multiple brains. So I can have different brains open and switch between them really easily. I can drag them out and even create new windows so I can see multiple brains at a time. But what you might not know is that you can use brain tabs to open up your current piece of information and keep it on screen while you navigate through your brain. So by right-clicking in the content area and selecting Open Content Window, I've now opened this notes area here. And now when I go through my brain, as I navigate, the content window stays here, and I can work on that area of my brain while I'm referencing content from other places. So that's a great little feature that I use all the time, and it really helps me to pull information from various parts of my brain together so that I can leverage all the content in my brain and get things done. So, okay. Okay, let's continue on. Let's say that I wanted to add something in my brain about the brain's 20th anniversary. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in here, brain 20th anniversary. And it looks like I actually don't have a thought for the brain's 20th anniversary yet. So what I'm going to do is hit the Tab button on my keyboard, and you can see it's highlighted the Quick Create button, the little lightning bolt there. When I press Enter, it's going to create that thought. This is a great little way to be able to create information when you're searching for it and you can't find it, or it's not there, and you realize, oh, hey, I'd like to create a thought for that. And now I can create something without having to connect it to anything else. From here, I want to take this piece of information, and I saw something in the search actually that I did want to connect it to. And to do that, I just click again, and you can see it's repeated the search that I did earlier. So that's a nice way that I can jump back into my search here, and now I can connect our 20th anniversary wallpapers up to the 20th anniversary thought that I just created. So let's take another look at how that feature works. I'm going to do a search for pictures, and you can see that there's 123 different thoughts in my brain related to pictures. And if I click on one of these, I can go to that area of my brain, but let's say that wasn't maybe what I was looking for. If I want to search for picture again, I just click in the search box again, and you can see it's opened it up once more. So this is a nice way to be able to go back to my search results without having to retype them. But if that's not fast enough for you, I can also preview search results by simply holding down the Shift key and clicking on the search. So this way, I can go straight to a variety of different thoughts until I get to the one I want. And here's a thought that will actually help me with our next feature. I want to show you some tricks with the content area. So I'm now showing my content area. And once again, I'll use the double click to open it up to the full screen. And you can see here, I've got a bunch of different pictures attached to this thought. And the content tabs in version 9 are quite powerful. They'll allow you to show previews of your information, whether it's a web page, PDF document, or in this case, an image. You can see all that information right inside your brain. And even Word documents and things like that can be opened directly inside the brain, making it much easier to access your content. But one of the things you might not know is that if I wanted to move through all these different pieces of information, all these different images, I don't have to use the mouse to click through them. On the Mac, I can just press Alt and Tab. And as I click the Tab button, it's going to go through these pictures just like a little slideshow. So this is a really convenient way to have a little slideshow right inside my brain. And it's just one example of how you can use keyboard shortcuts to accomplish new things that would be difficult with the mouse. And let me show you how you access your keyboard shortcuts. If you just open up the preferences and go to the keyboard tab, you'll see that there's a long list of basically all the commands inside your brain. And you can go through here and discover new things, as well as see what different keyboard shortcuts are available or assigned to different things. If you want to find a particular command, you can just type in here. In my case, I'll type content, and we can see here are the commands that we're just using to move through the different content areas. Okay, let's go back and talk about the content tabs a little more. So everyone has already seen that we can click on the tabs to show the content, of course, but you can also drag the tabs to rearrange the information and show and set which things you want to appear first. So that's a nice way to reorganize your content and prioritize it, but you can also drag and drop to take that information and put it out onto your desktop. Okay. So in this case, when I drop it here, you can see that it's copied the image right onto my desktop. And I can also use that to drag and drop into a web browser or to my email. It's a great way to export your information out of TheBrain without having to go to the folders and look at that. Let me go back over here now. Let's talk about tag icons next. One of the things that I've been working on recently was choosing a new technology to apply on our new website. And in this case, it's something called a headless content management system, which is a relatively new technology. I had to look at a lot of different technology providers, vendors, to try and make a decision. And in order to do that, I added them all into my brain so I could aggregate all the information about them, articles and so forth. But it was kind of hard to remember which things have I looked at and what did I think of them. So obviously I was able to create notes and add the notes in for each of these items. But one of the other things that I did is use the new tag icons so that I can visually see which things I was interested in and which things I did not like. So in this case, you can see that this is a rejected item. And if I wanted to go into the notes, I could check, what was it that I didn't like about it, or so forth. But as you're narrowing down your list, you can use tag icons to give yourself a quick visual reminder of what exactly what characteristics you had applied to each vendor. So in the end, we figured out what we wanted to go with, and you can see here how I arrived at that. Whenever you hover over the thoughts, the tags themselves will expand so you can see everything that's the meaning of your different icons. Okay. So let's go up here. And the next thing I want to talk about is thought properties. This is one of my favorite new things about TheBrain 9 in terms of the design. We spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out how to maximize screen real estate so that you could have your entire window dedicated to your brain. And you no longer have to have an area of the screen dedicated to showing the properties, because you can always access the properties with just a single click. And there's lots of different ways to open the properties. I can just click on the active thought, as you've seen here. I can hit the Enter key, and that will open it up if I'm navigating using the keyboard. Or you can hold down the Alt key and click on any piece of information. And when you do that, it's going to go ahead and open up those properties. And one of the other nice things is that if you want to see extra details, like when the piece of information was created or when you last modified it, you can open up the little tab here to expand out the window. And that's a feature that you'll see in a lot of other places in TheBrain also. Another new thing that you can access from the properties is the history of information. So when you click on the history thought, or the history icon, sorry, it opens up and shows you everything that's happened there right back to when it was created. And then finally, one of the main things that the thought properties is used for is to rename thoughts, of course. In this case, I have a thought called site redesign. And if you look down here at the child thoughts, you can see that I'm using the context sensitive naming feature to have these thoughts include the name of the parent thought and have it hidden until I mouse over it or select it. But if I rename the active thought, one of the issues with this feature in previous versions of TheBrain was that you had to then go ahead and rename all those other thoughts. But if I rename this thought, you can see that it automatically asks me if I'd like to rename it in all the connected thoughts. And so clicking right there, you can see that it's now renamed 7 different thoughts all in one step. So we spent a lot of time so far talking about user interface features. Let's switch gears a little and talk about something that you'll never see, but hopefully never even have to think about. TheBrain synchronization platform lets you have your brain on any device, even when you're offline. And it's much more reliable and powerful, so much so that we hope it's going to be completely transparent. There's lots of software out there that lets you sync files between machines, but with TheBrain, you can actually sync an entire network of connected data. You can easily have hundreds of thousands of items and multiple gigabytes shared across all your devices seamlessly. And in version 9, it's so much more powerful and reliable than ever before. And if I go ahead and click up here next to the cloud icon, you'll see that it can show me the status of my sync right now. So in this case, it shows me that I've made local changes and I last synced 5 minutes ago. And if I click the icon to actually perform the sync, you'll see that the sync itself is very quick. And that speed is something that's really convenient because it lets me keep all my brains in sync and have my information everywhere without even having to think about it. And one of the nice things about TheBrain 9 is that if I want to access my brain on another computer, all I have to do is log into the web or install the software. And when I install the software and log in, it's going to open the brains list up for you, and you're going to see your brain right there immediately. And all it takes is a single click, and it's going to download that brain from the cloud. And just as important, I can now access my brain on my phone or any other device. You can see here, I've got my iPhone 10, and this brain is actually completely local on my device here. So this is perhaps one of the most surprising things about version 9 that I was quite pleased with, which is that having my brain locally on my my phone has really changed the way I think about using it. In version 8, I could have my brain on my phone, of course, but I always had to make sure I had an internet connection. With TheBrain 9 and having my phone local, I can know and rely on having it no matter where I am. So it really changes your comfort level knowing that all the information you've got packed into your brain is just right there in your pocket. And you can rely on being able to access it at any time. So I want to make sure we have time for Q&A. So let me just quickly touch on a few other things. When you've got a big brain, the reports area can come in handy. And this is an area that we've done quite a bit of work on recently. You can see here I've got about 19,000 thoughts in my brain. And there's lots of different reports in here that you can use to filter out your information and find things in new ways. Really get a kind of high-level overview of what's inside your brain. But one of the areas that I personally use is the search by attachments or the filtering by attachments. In this case, I'm showing the internal attachments in my brain. You can see I've got 7,000 thoughts with internal attachments. But if I wanted to go ahead and find the thoughts that were taking up a lot of space on my machine, I can go ahead and here and say, I want to find thoughts that are more than 10,000 kilobytes. And when I click enter, it updates the report. So you can see now I've found the top 40 thoughts that have a lot of information in them. And one of the last things I want to talk about is the themes for the brain. So as you probably noticed, I've got one of our 20th anniversary wallpapers here set up as my current brain theme. And if I go ahead and right click on the brain's theme area here, let's go back over here. And when I open up the themes, you can see that it gives you the ability to change all the colors and wallpaper and so forth. But one of the things that's new in the TheBrain 9 is the ability to apply themes to your notes. And I can switch inside here to all different kinds of looks. And it's very fast to be able to change all your notes at the same time. So this is just another nice little feature that lets me keep all my notes consistent, but at the same time, experiment with different looks and feels. So, and finally, as the last thing, another feature that you might not notice, but hopefully you'll kind of take for granted, is the fact that in the Brain 9, when you exit the program, it's going to remember exactly where you left off and take you straight back there. So even if you have 5 different windows open, they're all in different configurations. Sometimes you've got reports open, sometimes you've got notes. When you return to the software the next day, it's going to be exactly how you left it. So that's another thing that we've spent quite a bit of time on, just to get all those little, nice little polished details functioning great, so that hopefully this program can just disappear and you can concentrate on your brain.
All right, great. Well, we have a lot of questions. I just want to make sure you've covered everything as far as your 20 features, but we are raring to go in the question Q&A panel, Harlan. So is now a good time to get that started?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to go a little bit larger in terms of some vision questions, and then we have some very specific questions on stuff that you've just demoed as well. So I'm going to start with the larger vision questions, and then just guys, hang on, because I know you had a lot of questions, and some of you a question on how did he move those parent thoughts and your thoughts quickly. So we're going to have to do a repeat demo on that. But let's go ahead and get started. I actually had some people tweeting and emailing me from across the globe, some Australian users that couldn't actually join us today. So we're going to get started. And Matt, feel free to jump in on the more specific questions if I miss anything. But Harlan, since we have you, we have to go back in time. We have to go back 20 years and talk a little bit about some of your inspirations. So let's see, that was 1998. Wow, quite a while back. But you actually created the Brain well before 98. That's just when we're celebrating our anniversary as when the users started using it. Can you talk about some of the drivers and what prompted you way back when to come up with such a revolutionary idea like the Brain?
Sure. I get this question asked quite a bit. So it was almost 25 years ago now when I first started working on the Brain. I had the idea for it. Basically the problem that I was trying to solve is that there's really no place on my computer where I could go to think, really. And the whole metaphor that was kind of the face of the computer at the time was the computer desktop. And this is before the web and the internet and that stuff like that. And people were kind of like not that excited about computers, whereas I was always really excited about it and thought this is a device that could really change your life and change the way you think. But there's nothing that was really designed to let it do that. So,
and this is like late 90s, guys, just to put it in context for some of the millennials who are on the call and don't even understand what it's like to be without their phone. We're talking late 90s here. So this is very revolutionary.
Early 90s, actually.
Early 90s, okay, here we go, early 90s, right. Okay, continue, Harlan.
So yeah, I mean, switching the metaphor from the desktop to the Brain was really kind of like the key driver in terms of the idea. And then the structure of information is really the fundamental underpinnings of the entire platform. Where in files and folders on the desktop, you can really put things only in one place. And that's really organizing information by limiting it rather than organizing it by connecting it. So the fundamental premise of the software was that the computer is capable of representing all the relationships that exist in your head and in the real world. So why not make that capability something that anyone can access, rather than only people who, really know how to program a computer and make it do things that they want. So the Brain was intended to give a lot more power to people that wanted to be able to control their information and make it reflect the way they think.
Excellent. And now let's fast forward to kind of where we are today. So, that vision of, helping people understand and letting them capture their thoughts on their computer. I mean, for me, it's been fabulous. I've seen brains in terms of global situational awareness in the Department of Defense, all the way to somebody's creative brain on how to produce a play. So the range of brains that people are creating, and I know I see a few people on the call, like I know Pat has a great brain. I see Conrad Clybourne on our call as well. Hey, CC, who also goes around Washington showing his brain. So I'm very impressed by users' brains as well. Over the course of the years, what brains have impressed you from the user community?
Well, it's always exciting to see people's brains. Some of the more impressive projects in terms of like, really describing to other people would probably be the corporate applications, but things like the the cardiac surgery brain, where it's got
Dr.
all
Baker,
the different,
yep.
Dr. Baker's brain, which basically has all the materials that that are used across the entire country to teach people how to do heart surgery. That's kind of like pretty amazing to me, that like, hey, they're really taking the technology and applying it in ways that are really changing people's lives. So that's something that's kind of exciting. And there's other applications that are kind of like marquee applications. But to me, what's always most exciting is actually seeing individuals' brains and what they're doing with it in terms of their own lives. Because that's really what the vision was always about, is enabling people to take the thoughts in their head and concretize them inside the computer. There have even been users that we've met in the past that have used the brain as a supplement to their memory, because they actually have issues with their memory, and having the brain was able to really help them overcome something that was a real challenge to their lives. So again, that's something that that was obviously very inspiring. So it really spans the gamut from corporate applications to very personal uses, applications of the software. But yeah, it's always great to meet somebody and hear that you've really made a difference, and their lives depend on their brains.
It is quite interesting, because I think about my own use and very personal things, like I'll put in my shopping list and things I want to buy to Amazon, to some very strategic thoughts. And as you say, Joint Council of Cardiothoracic Surgery is using the brain to help our next generation of surgeons do heart surgery and save lives. So there is quite a range. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, I don't want to put you on the spot, but we're in your brain. Lovely brain. And by the way, I love the 20th anniversary wallpaper. We'll show you guys how to do that. What are some of your key thoughts or areas? And again, I don't necessarily want to put you on the spot to go to these areas, but do you subscribe to more of the one brain for everything? Are you creating more content brains like Matt? How do you personally, as the inventor and developer of the brain, use the brain in your daily life?
Well, I have one brain that really has all my information in it. I do have a variety of other brains on my computer, as you probably saw, but primarily those are for sharing with other people. So, I've got brains about the company, of course, and things like that. But most of the key information that I use personally for the company is connected here in my section on the brain itself. So I've got all kinds of information here, obviously, from documents and legal things and stuff like that. But also got information on the different versions of the software. For instance, here's information on the Brain 9, and inside here,
ooh, careful, careful. No,
all kinds of stuff.
Guys, keep your eyes wide open on this. We're going into
my current projects here.
Okay.
We've already started working on the Brain 10. I'm not going to click on that, but there's lots of information inside there. Different marketing projects that we're thinking about working on. Of course, what we actually did today. So those are some of my more active areas. And then I've also got personal information in here, like, I do martial arts, so I track a lot of my stuff in there. I can maybe go over there and see. So I've got a section in here on martial arts and different types of martial arts, and then different areas. So this is
so you're grappling with information management and physically grappling with people in the evenings. Okay, very nice.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, I mean, you can see I've got a lot of information in here, and it's something that is yet another way to use the software. Actually, I've met a couple other people now that use TheBrain to track martial arts techniques and how they're all interconnected. It's always surprising how there's so many different ways that you can use the software.
Wow, that's great. And so now let's fast forward to where we are today, and with the release of the Brain 9 out in beta form, but pretty much done, and the official release coming soon. What were some of the key development milestones and the impetus for the Brain 9 and where we are today with the Brain 9?
The Brain 9 has been an especially long journey. For those of you who've been following us for a while, you know that it's been in beta for a long time, over a year. I'm not sure exactly how long, but and before that, we worked on it for a long time. Even when we were still working on the Brain 8, the Brain 9 was already well underway. And the reason why it took so long is because we switched from a Java-based set of code onto something that's brand new in C#. And C# has allowed us to build it natively across all the different platforms. So we started out basically building something that was focused on having top-level performance on the Windows platform and on Mac OS. And as you can see, I use Mac OS every day, so it's kind of like our it's got a lot of attention on it. But of course, the Windows platform is also, dominant, and we've put a lot of effort into making sure that we've got first-class performance on both those platforms. So that was really kind of the first thing, was proving out that we could build something cross-platform on those two things. And then from there, we moved on to the Android and iOS platforms. And if you checked out either one of those, you'll notice that now the visualization on the mobile device is on par with the desktop. We put a lot of work into doing that and making sure that was possible. So, the initial beta, I believe it came out in late 2015. So that was kind of the first public viewing of this technology, if you will. It was a little bit nerve-wracking to basically take kind of 15 years of work and replace it with something that was brand new and so young in its development. But now that it's been I guess over 2 years since we did that, the Brain 9 is even more mature than version 8 was in terms of the technology, the reliability, and the amount of effort that we've put into kind of smoothing out all the rough edges. And then just a few weeks ago, I think, we released the first release candidate, and we're really excited to get it out there and have everyone switch over to using version 9.
All right, great. Well, we're going to jump into some of the questions now that are coming in at a very rapid pace in the Q&A. And I'm going to start off, since we're talking about development, there's a question that came in from Rude, or is it Rudd? I hope I'm saying your name correctly. And he wanted to know if you are the main developer or single developer, or is there a team working behind the code? And I can say, yes, there is a team. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the process of development of the Brain 9, specifically with your team. And I know we actually use the Brain 9 as well for our development, and we have lots of engineering teams beyond us that actually manage, features and releases and so forth. So maybe you can talk a little bit about to address that question, your team, the engineering team, and how you function at the Brain.
Sure. Well, we have a small team of engineers here. Thankfully, I don't have to write the vast majority of the code. Basically, my role as the CTO is to, select kind of the base technologies. So kind of one of the first key things I did with the Brain 9 was decide on the platform and choosing C# and some of the tool sets that we used that have enabled us to build the native client on all the different platforms. And then from there, I pass it off to some of the lead engineers and have them kind of prove out some of the concepts that I posit will be successful. And thankfully, I made a good choice this time. But we have different people that are specialized in different things. We have one person that just does kind of the visualization aspect of it, and his work has been extremely successful. He'll notice that in version 9, there's a lot of kind of visual flourishes that weren't present on earlier versions of the software. And that's both a factor of the fact that we're now running on native code and we can do a lot more stuff, and everything's a little bit faster and more performant. But also it's a consequence of having built the Brain from scratch 3 times now.
Right, and I think it's worth pointing out that we are in rapid development mode because it's a huge milestone doing that fundamental rewrite. And dare I mention, sans Java as well, which I know a lot of users are happy about. But because of this, we're seeing features pop up every week. Is that going to continue, Harlan? Would you say now that we've got that fundamental code base, is this a very exciting time for the Brain, is it not?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, in a way, it's kind of a relief to be able to have version 9 out, having rebuilt everything and built a stable platform for us to move forward on. If you can imagine building a house, if you have a house that's very old, it's kind of hard to improve, right? But if you want to move to a new house, if you have to start from scratch, it takes a very long time to get it into the shape where you can actually move in. But once you've got it constructed, if you want to make additions to it from there or improvements, it's much easier. So we're now in that phase of having built everything and we've got a solid foundation and all the fundamentals are in place. From here, it'll be much easier actually for us to add new features and improve things. So that's something that we're looking forward to. But
so if a user wants like a jacuzzi in their living room, they might actually get it in the future.
Well, that's one of the other things I wanted to talk about a little bit, which is that we do want to be careful in terms of what features we add to the software. Mm-hmm. There's some pieces of software that kind of become worse over time because they add so much things to them that they become quite bloated. And then it's difficult to maintain them, not just from a kind of technology platform perspective, but also in terms of kind of user interface and how it functions to try and learn the software and understand all the things that it can do. But I think we've struck a good balance in what we've done so far, in that we're trying to keep it simple for the end users, but then when you explore it, there's actually a lot of depth in all the different features. So
yes.
So yeah, moving forward, we will be adding new features, but we're not going to be kind of tacking things on in arbitrarily. We're going to be careful about how we develop it and make sure that everything that we add is something that's going to be in long-term best interests of the software and all the users.
Very nice. Makes a lot of sense. And speaking of powerful and fundamental features, we're gonna dive in with Matt to some of our questions. And I'm gonna start off with, I see Cece Conrad Clybourne over from MedTech at IQ, which by the way has an amazing site, Brain. I don't know if that's still published. We can send that link out. And how are you doing today? He wants us to talk a little bit about link types. He says, I find them very powerful, but as another question asked, can we search or sort by link type or thought type in the Brain 9?
Yes. If you go into the reports area, the link types are available right inside here. So if I go and say I want to search by types and tags, under the types menu, there are thought types at the top, and then there's a little section splitter here, and you can see that I can also search by link types. So when I click on a link type, it's going to show me all the thoughts that employ that link type. So that's something that I'm not sure if that was in the Brain 8 or not, but it is in the Brain 9. And then one of the other things about link types that we've improved is the user interface here. So if I want to add a link type here, when I go ahead and click on here, you can see that I can see all the different types here. And then when if I wanted to add a new type, I can just click there and open up that type. So the ability to use link types to kind of make your relationships between thoughts consistent is something that you know, we've always been focused on in terms of trying to make that straightforward for the user, but still powerful enough to serve the needs of a power user like CC.
Right, and so we've redone thought types, link types, and tags in the Brain 9. I mean, the concept, the fundamental concept of the semantic meaning behind the type, tag, or link type is there, but there are some nice little menu options that have changed for the Brain 9.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, the capabilities are similar to what they were in the Brain 8, but some of the ways that you access you access those features and apply them, it's just a little bit cleaner and easier to use in version 9.
All right, great. And I want to jump to Perry's question and talk a little bit about our mobile apps. The mobile apps are now native, and I'll let Harlan expand on what that means. But Perry's asking, with the power of iPads and better keyboard support, I'd like to be able to really work on my iPad. This would include opening and editing attachments. Any plans to allow such creating and editing better yet? Or I guess the full app on the iPad. So let's talk about where we are with, I guess, in relation to iPad, Android, iOS is looking good.
Sure.
Maybe where we are, where we're going there for Perry.
Okay. So in terms of the iPad or iPhone or all the mobile devices, really, it's a little bit of a challenge to make it do the same things that it does on the desktop in terms of attachments. And the reason is that it's kind of a fundamentally different environment. The attachments that you bring in on your desktop, you're able to click on them and open them in other pieces of software. Whereas in the mobile world, the storage spaces between each application are isolated. And you know, I think Apple has done that in interest of security and trying to make things a little simpler for the end user. But it also means that when you click on an attachment in the Brain, it has to say, well, what am I allowed to do with this piece of information? We can't just say open it like we can on the desktop. So it's probably a ways away from approaching the same convenience in terms of being able to edit attachments. But you know, as the operating systems mature and enable more capabilities, the Brain will follow suit, and you will be able to do more and more things like that. But in terms of iOS and the iPad in particular, there's lots of things we have planned to improve it and take advantage of the larger screens and things like that. That's something that you can expect to see coming forward or going forward in the next the next year or so.
And the best thing is the offline usage. You can get access to your brain on your device,
Absolutely.
which I particularly love. And I know our field service reps love this without necessarily being connected to that server. So if you just want to have an information guide and you're out there in the field, whether you're troubleshooting an airplane or looking at your crops out on, on the farm, you've got your device and your brain is there offline as well, which is a fundamental and incredibly powerful feature, especially if you're traveling or on the move or doing offline technical support, as we have a lot of users as well. So that's one of my favorites, and I know that's something that a lot of users in that field have talked about. So field service reps, do take note of that. Take your brain with you on your mobile devices offline, not just your laptop anymore. So that's great. And then speaking of accolades, Han says, congratulations. It's a great program. I'm a scientist and I use the program for presentations, for lectures, and the organization of scientific publications, etc., for management tasks. So that's really interesting, Hans. And that's not unlike what Harlan referenced earlier, Dr. Craig Baker, the Joint Council of Cardiothoracic Surgery. We have some wonderful and powerful research examples and a video on that. So for those of you in the scientific research education fields, this is a very key application. We do have some examples and we're always happy to work with you and support these applications. The ability to link one piece of information and have that piece of information located in many different connections is, I think, what draws these scientists and research, I guess, pioneers to the brain. Can you talk a little bit about the power, Harlan, of multi-dimensional categorization and how we apply and how some of our users and maybe even yourself are applying that to their lives and their daily work habits?
Sure. I guess sort of the appeal of the brain has always been to really be able to leverage all of the connections in your data and make them a reality kind of outside of your head. That's something that's most useful to people who have a lot of information and a lot of connections, of course. And of course, researchers and scientists and people that are just inundated with information, and their whole job is all about making connections, really, and analyzing those connections and trying to come up with new things based on those relationships. That's the brain is particularly appealing to them, of course. It's kind of a a very broad thing in that just about any piece of information can be connected in many different ways. But I guess the trick to enabling that to be most useful is in deciding which connections are the most important. One of the great things about the brain is that not only can you make those connections, but you can change them very easily. One of the things that I've seen some people struggle with a little bit is like, okay, well, now I've got the software and I understand technically how to use it, but how do I actually apply it to my daily life? The best way to do that, in my opinion, is always just to start using it and give it a try, because you don't really have to decide kind of beforehand, well, this is the structure that I want to use and this is how I'm going to connect each piece of information, because it's really easy to change things as you move forward. And the more you use it, the better you'll get at it, and the more comfortable you will be in sort of intuitively understanding which are the connections that matter the most. maybe the way that's easiest to think about it is in terms of the relationships between people. Everyone's familiar with social networks these days, of course, which are all about who's connected to who. But in your brain, you can model that behavior in a way that matches what you do, right? So in my brain, I have a lot of different people. I don't want to kind of get into that right now because I don't want to show all of those people's information on my screen. But when you do go to a particular person, it's an easy way to understand relationships and how they're useful. So I have people connected to the organizations that they're associated with, the companies that they've worked for, the friends that they have, and oftentimes the people that will have introduced me to them. So in that way, it's kind of a jumping off point for everything else that is in my brain. So you can think of that as kind of like an underlying social network that pins together all of your information, right? Where the people are not necessarily only connected to each other, but they're also connected to the activities that they're associated with in your mind, or the products that they represent, or even the places that you met them, right? So, and then once you kind of have started out on that approach, then you can apply something similar to other things, like individual concepts, things that are a little more abstract in nature, where, for instance, I have a section on different philosophical approaches to design, and you can go in there and say, okay, well, here are the people that are really most representative of that, or here are the books that are exemplify these different thoughts, and all those connections. Once you kind of wrap them all up and tie them together, you're going to get a beautiful brain that will be, personally representative of your information. So that's okay.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, a network by definition is a many-to-many relationship, and that's one of the great things about the brain. Anything can be connected to anything else. You can have as many or as few links as you want, and that's really how we're able to transcend like a linear file folder system and offer people this expressiveness, to organize their information. And Matt, now I see a lot of questions and I see you typing away there. So I maybe go back to the top of the Q&A where, let's go through a few more of these specific user questions since we've had a lot of theory coming in. I see a few, but you've been really jamming on the Q&A. So I'm gonna let you throw a few questions out from maybe early in the session coming through our user Q&A channel.
Sure, absolutely. So many great questions, and Harlan, everyone is really, really enjoying seeing your brain, your thoughts in your brain. And I've been focused on the chat, so I may have missed some questions along the way. Did you have a chance to show your statistics or show the number of thoughts? Like this brain, I'm assuming, has been in existence for 20 years, so it's accumulated a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, I can go ahead and open up the statistics here about my brain. As you can see, I've got about 19,000 thoughts in there, and a little over 24,000 links, 25,000 links. I started working on this this brain. I don't even know when, but I've never, kind of restarted my brain. So it's the same brain it's always been, and it's been around for that long. There's kind of trying to think like where should I go in my brain to show you guys, but maybe I'll jump over.
I don't want to move. I don't want to give away the brain or the brain 20, the brain 2000. Tom
actually noticed that you've got two thoughts called a jump thought called cool ideas and a child thought called my ideas. So great, you're going right into the my ideas thought. So that's what Tom wanted to know more about.
So I've got a lot of different sections, or a lot of different thoughts about ideas, as you can see. But I've got kind of a section on ideas that has, my ideas, and then other people's ideas, game ideas, and other things about ideas. And then connected under there, I've got some things that I probably shouldn't click on. But the reason why I have why I have so many thoughts called ideas is because I've got a lot of ideas. And it's something that I want to be able to track and really document and capture. And one of the things that you'll notice as you use the brain more and more is that it can actually prompt you to go back to things that you had thought of a long time ago, and kind of only able to remember because you have them documented inside your brain. The ideas that I've got in my brain are basically like every time I think of something that's maybe interesting, maybe a great idea, maybe not a great idea, it doesn't really matter. I put it in here, right? So as you can see, I've got a section called My Really Good Ideas. I don't remember exactly what's in there, but I'm not going to click on it. And then I've got my other ideas, and that's got things that are, kind of throwaways that I just put out there, and maybe I'll move them into one of the other sections, or maybe not. And then I've got what I call big ideas, and and big ideas are things that maybe insights, I should say, that can kind of drive trends across large swaths of an industry or of a philosophy or something like that, right? Whereas other things are just more like concrete things that you could actually execute. Sorry, I can't click on these things because if I was just presenting, kind of casually, it'd be easy, but I know this is going to be recorded and everyone's going to be out there looking at it, so I'm not going to click on these things.
Okay, great. And I guess that sort of transitions into one more question that I'll present to you. A couple of people asked about how you like to archive information in the brain. Obviously, with a brain of that size, that much information, you're hanging on to it. Do you move it to another area? Do you flag it in a certain way? What's your favorite way of archiving information that you might need later, but you don't want to delete? Right.
Generally speaking, I just keep everything. Occasionally I'll forget something or delete it, but usually not. For example, let me go over here into Java. So Java is a technology that we were kind of tightly tied to for a very long time. So naturally, I have a lot of information about it. But as you can see, it's all still here in my brain. But the nice thing about the brain is that this doesn't really get in my way. I never see it unless I go and look for it, right? So instead of kind of archiving things and sort of putting them in a box, I just leave it there and have it connected. So when I want to go back and see it, it's always there. But what tends to happen is as I kind of continue to work with my brain, I've got all that information just kind of sitting there waiting for me. But when I'm working on something like C#, for instance, let's see if I have a section here. I do. Then I've got the information about that whatever I'm working on available, and it doesn't really overlap with old stuff. So there's no need to sort of archive things if you connect things up the way that you should.
What does, in your vision, what does the future hold for the brain?
Well, that's an interesting question. One of the things that I'm just so excited about getting version 9 out there is that it really is kind of been all-consuming for us for the last 5 years, and now that we have it out there, it's really going to enable us to do so much more in the future. In terms of kind of the big picture of where we're going next, I guess. One of the things that we're going to be focused on quite a bit more is the collaboration aspect of the brain, and that's something that you can see now in the TheBrain software, but TheBrain is kind of something that's designed for corporate use, if you will. Groups of people that are all going to be working in the same brain together and playing with the same thoughts. But that collaborative nature is something that I think is really exciting in terms of the future, not just for corporate users, but also for individuals. The ability to share brains or thoughts on a more casual basis is something that I think has a lot of potential to kind of change the way that people think about their brains in terms of being sort of like isolated areas versus something that maybe is a little bit more permeable and shareable with other people. Of course, not in a way that that you don't know what's shared, but in a way that you can easily take advantage of other people's thoughts when they invite you to. So that's one thing that I think kind of longer term is something that's an area that's very exciting.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Harlan. And I do want to let everyone know a lot of questions now came up previously and are coming up now about collaboration. We do have TheBrain options available as well right now. So please feel free to send a note into support@thebrain.com. If we didn't get to your question today and you're still interested in knowing more about a specific feature, please send us in a note, support@thebrain.com. We're happy to hear from you. Happy to tell you about TheBrain and collaborative options. And also for the questions that came in for the people that are just now discovering the brain, please feel free to join us in the future for a Brain 101 class. Every Friday, we host Brain 101. It's really a step-by-step process. We build a new brain from scratch and take you through all the basics that you need to know to get started using the brain.
Okay, so let's go ahead, and I'd like to continue on with RD, who has a wonderful comment. I love this, so let's go jump right in. He says, as a 63-year-old plus young user with cognitive disabilities, if I may add the response to the query on age use, I guess Rude actually has, and I'm sorry, am I pronouncing, Matt, I know you kind of talk, I don't know if it's Rudd or Rude, asked the question, how about, people of different age ranges? How does that work? And, I can speak, my own personal experience with solutions, age range, and of course, special needs users we have, as well as people with mental and physical challenges. But RD wanted to add this comment in, as a 63-year-old plus young user with cognitive disabilities, if I may add the response to the query on age and use, the brain is at times a literal replacement for my brain. It is absolutely essential for me to get through my day, much less my near and long-term future goals. The brain rocks, as it does help the team who has responded to me and all my offline unintelligible helps. So that's very cool. In terms of the age range of users, that's a very nice comment. So we appreciate that. And Harlan, in terms of the users, what always surprises you in terms of the range of users that you've experienced in kind of helping people and implementing the software?
Well, I mean, first of all, I want to say, that's a very inspiring comment there. I'm glad to hear that we've been able to make such a difference for somebody. RD, thank you for sharing that with us. in terms of users, I mean, sort of the continual challenge for me personally and for the company in general, I think, is that you know, there's really is such a wide range of users and people that are excited about using the software. And you know, of course, everybody thinks that you know, the way they use the software is the most important way, and of course, to them it is. But it's difficult for us as a company to kind of decide, well, you know, which use really is the most important, and what should we focus on. So, you know, we've tried to maintain the ability to be a horizontal application that can address a wide swath of functionality for different people. But you know, we don't want to kind of pigeonhole ourselves into something that's just like, oh, it's a research and development tool, or it's a tool for writers, or it's a tool for business people, or so forth. So yeah, I mean, it's continually a pleasant surprise to see the way people are using it, and the things that they find to be you know, most useful.
All right, great. And I don't know when my connection dropped for a section, if we covered Conrad's question about Harlan. Can you talk a little bit about how TheBrain works as a collaborative tool with multiple contributors? Did we get to that, or?
We touched on it a little bit, but we didn't actually.
Okay.
I didn't actually hear that question.
Okay.
You know, in terms of collaboration, you know, TheBrain is I think I think it's one of the most powerful ways to collaborate, in that it enables people to you know, build a pretty sophisticated model of information. You know, when you have multiple people working inside of a brain, it's a little bit different, because you want to try and create kind of a consistent approach to information. And that's where thought types and tags come in as being kind of like the meta structure for your information. You know, Matt and Shelley have both actually spent quite a bit of time working with some of our customers on a concept that we call the knowledge model, which basically means, like, for any given set of information, you know, what are the common characteristics, what are the types of information that are dealt with, and what are the relationship types that are common there. And in collaboration, one of the things that you can do is basically create this knowledge model, or kind of like a schema for your information, and define, you know, what are the types of information, and how are they usually connected. And then as you collaborate inside the brain, you can use those types to help ensure that, you know, when people are looking at a certain type of information, they can always find those relationships in the same places. So that's one aspect of collaboration. It's a little different, that makes collaboration in the brain a little different, and from how you might use it on your own as an individual user.
And where is the collaboration and sync on the Brain 9? There's a button to sync and share your brain, similar to the Brain 8, or how does that differ?
So actually, you know, the Brain 9, the sync and all that stuff is identical in TheBrain to how it works in the Brain 9. I mean, the sync capabilities and how that works, you know, is still controlled through the toolbar here. And you can set your brain up to sync automatically. The main difference is that when you go in and look at the changes in your brain, so in here you can see that I've got my recent changes. These are the things that we've done during the demo here. But when you open this up, when you have multiple people working in a brain, you're able to see, you know, who made those changes. And, you know, if you're looking at the list of recent changes, as an individual user, you might wonder, well, why do I need to know that I did all this stuff? Well, the reason that's there is because when you have multiple people working in your brain, you can see who did what when. And that enables you to get a feel for what's happened and maybe what areas of the brain you might want to go and focus in on. Another thing that's interesting or cool about working in the team brain is that as you're working inside the brain and other people are adding information, you can actually see that information get added in almost real time. As soon as your brain syncs with the cloud, the information is going to appear inside your brain right as you're just sitting there. So it's really a different experience being able to build a brain collaboratively, and you can see your approach to the information and what you bring to it really kind of meshing in and tying together with that of your colleagues.
All right, great. We have a question from George from the UK. Hey, folks, I have a question about GCal. Can we get reminders in our calendar app? iCal for me.
Yeah, I'm not exactly familiar with what platform that particular user is using, but one of the things that we've spent quite a bit of time on in version 9 is the timeline interface, which stores all your events and is actually synchronized with Google. In my case, I don't have a lot of information on my timeline, but I know I've got my birthday coming up here, so here it is on the timeline here. But the timeline is really nice because you can zoom in and out and go through different areas. Right now I'm looking at it a day scale, but I can switch through here and go out to weeks or months and so forth. And if you're using the date slot, I don't kind of have a lot of date-oriented information in my brain, but if you do, you can set it up to sync with Google, and you do that in here under the Google Calendar settings. And what happens is it's going to connect your events with the Google events, and if you make changes in Google, it'll sync them back to the brain and vice versa. And those events can include dates, or sorry, reminders, I mean. So if I go back to today here, so let's say I wanted to have a reminder here at 2 o'clock. I'm going to create a new event for an hour in here. If I go ahead and check that box there, it's going to say how long do you want, or when do you want this reminder. In this case, I'm going to say 10 minutes before, and say I'm going to go and get a snack. So when this time comes up now, I'll get that reminder, and it'll take me right back to this event. I can also associate the event with a thought. So in this case, I'm going to attach it to the Harlan thought. And if I were somewhere else in my brain, when that reminder comes up, it can take me not just to the calendar itself, but also to the thought that it's associated with.
All right, great. So we're getting into a little bit of the nitty-gritty questions here. George has a question. How do we link between brains?
Okay, so to link between brains, the best way to do that is probably to go ahead and create a link to that thought. So if I go ahead and say copy local thought URL, what that's going to do is basically put a link to this brain, or sorry, to this thought onto my clipboard, and then I can then paste that into another brain. And when you do that, when you follow that link, it's going to take you from one thought to the other.
All right. Excellent. And then John has a question. How do we change the theme of an existing brain? And also, I should point out you're using one of the commemorative anniversary themes. Maybe you can show us, I don't want to mess up your own brain. I don't know if you need to move to a test brain or anything, but if you could show themes and actually show our commemorative wallpaper themes, that would also, a couple questions coming in on that.
Sure. So if you just right click on the background, you can open up the brain themes area here. I've got a whole bunch of themes in here, but if you then click on a theme, it's going to load that theme and apply it to your brain. And the theme includes the wallpaper as well as the links and all the different colors. And you can even associate different fonts with the themes. So in the default themes that we include with the software, usually we have you know, kind of the base level fonts, but you know, something that you might want to do for yourself is go in and select a different font. When you do that, what you're going to notice is that it's sorry, let me go down here and select something here. So this is one of the fonts that I like to use. If you use a condensed font, it lets you see more information in your brain at once. I've got Universe in this case here, and as you can see, it's made all my thoughts a little bit more narrow. So I can see more.
Right, that looks great. And we cover a lot more on personalization and themes in our Brain 101 class. That's every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern time. So if you want to get into building a brain for ground up and customizing, join us for that class. And I also want to point out, we're talking very high level advanced. Not all of our webinars are like this, but you know, this is something we really want to pick Harlan's brain and talk about more of these advanced features and advanced concepts. But if you're a new user and you're like, help me, my brain doesn't have all these thoughts that Harlan does, don't worry about it. Join us for the Brain 101. It's will get you going very quickly on a brand new brain, and hopefully the session has been helpful to both new and the older users. And speaking of a longtime user, I have Ron on the call as well. And Ron was asking a bit, and a couple other users, about keyboard shortcuts. I guess he was looking for the set to thought type shortcut. And basically in the Brain 9, keyboard shortcuts are done differently from the Brain 8. So can you speak to how we're now doing keyboard shortcuts and how someone like Ron can customize their keyboard shortcuts in the Brain 9?
Absolutely. So we touched on this a little bit in the demo, but we can spend a little more time. Basically, if you open up the Preferences dialog on Windows, it's under Options. On Mac, it's under the Brain menu. When you open up the keyboard area here, you're going to see a list of basically all the commands that are available in the Brain, and you can see there's quite a few of them. But for every command that has a keyboard shortcut, it's listed here on the right. But you can add a keyboard shortcut to any command. We don't have them assigned to everything because there's just so many different options. But if there are certain things that you like to use a lot, you can go in and add them in there. So if I click the collapse all button here to show me all the different sections, and then I can open up in each individual section and say, okay, well, I'd like to be able to open a thought in a new tab with a single key. So I then select the command that I want to add a new keyboard shortcut for, and then I just type in whatever it is I want to use for that. So let's say I'm going to use Command Shift T, and now it's applied that keyboard shortcut. So now when I close this, if I then push Command Shift T, it's opened a new tab up here with this thought. And if I go like this here, so I'm just going to use the keyboard keys to go ahead and move to a different section here.
So obviously the little circle is representing your keyboard actions.
Yes, exactly. So when I use the arrow keys to navigate here, it's selecting those different items. Now, if I use that key again, you can see that I've now got this thought also opened up as a separate tab.
Oh wow! So the sky is kind of the limit in terms of what you can do with these keyboard shortcuts. There's a lot of customization, and you know what, guys? I know you have specific things you want to do. Write into support, email support. We're always happy to jump on a web meeting. and we have a number of experts right in-house, right off, based in Los Angeles. Or if you're talking about, it'll be remote from his Milwaukee office. But you know, we all have a very good group of people that can help you customize your brain, whether it's shortcuts, keyboards, links, and so forth. And then speaking of links, Barbara, I want to get back to Barbara's question. And Matt, jump in if I'm not asking this correctly, because I want to. You were demonstrating something earlier, and she says, and I'm going to read her question directly to you, Harlan. When Harlan was demonstrating changing parents thought, site rebuild, he had a child thoughts with site rebuild as a preface, but it didn't show until he moused over them. How do you add that to a child thought but not see it?
Sure. So that's something we call context sensitive naming, and basically what it is adding a thought, and at the time you add the thought, or even after you've created the thought, you just add the other part of the thought, the other part of the name, separated by a comma. So let's say, for instance, here under Harlan, I want to have an area called, I don't know, goals, let's say. So I've got Harlan, and now if I add a new thought and I type comma goals, what it's going to do is create a new thought called goals. And you can see it's right here, but when I mouse over it, you can see that it's actually called Harlan, comma goals. And that way, if I have other thoughts named goals, I know which one I'm looking at easily. And from here, let's see here, let me just expand this example a little bit. So I'm going to create another thought called goals, and this is the kind of classic case for using context-sensitive naming. When I'm on the thought called goals, this thought is called Harlan. And when I'm on the thought Harlan, this thought is called goals. So that's how you set up context-sensitive naming. When you create the thought, you can put a comma at the start or the end, and wherever that comma is, it will be replaced with the other thought name. But if you have a thought that you have set up already, let's say I had, actually, I'll go back over here. Let's say I had fitness goals I wanted to achieve. So I'm going to type in fitness goals. And you can see now that it's just a regular thought with a regular name. But if I wanted this to utilize the context-sensitive naming, what I can do is just rename the thought and add the comma here. And once I've got that comma inserted, you can see that it's now using that to filter out the related names. So now Harlan just appears as, or Harlan goals just appears as Harlan, and fitness just appears as fitness instead of fitness, comma goals. So it's kind of a little bit tricky to explain verbally, but if you play with it, you'll see what happens. Basically, any redundant part of the name is removed based on what the active thought is. And
affectionately known as the comma trick.
Yes.
As Matt and I like to refer to it with clients.
Yeah, basically you separate the different portions of your name using commas, and then the redundant portions are filtered out automatically in the display. And
this is something that for like, we had some clients in the insurance industry, and they have very, very long names. And I say, shorten those names. But if you can't think of unique names, this is where the comma trick can help you out. So instead of just your invoice, you can't have a million thoughts with invoice in your brain, but you can have your client name, comma, invoice, and then that gets to name specific, but yet you won't necessarily see that client name when you're on the thought. You'll just see the invoice link below. So
then the other thing that I showed earlier is that if you rename part of your thoughts, in this case, I'm going to change goals to objectives, what you're going to see is that it's going to automatically detect that the word goals was in two related thoughts. And if I click rename, it's going to automatically rename those two thoughts also. that's a nice little convenience factor that we've added in for version 9.
All right, great. And then a couple users, including Ron, are asking a little bit about sharing your brain and publishing in TheBrain 9. And that is a feature that has evolved and is continuing to evolve. So that you can post your brain and share it online. It's a newer cloud, and it is still in rapid development. So not to open up a whole new webinar topic on online sharing, but maybe you can talk a little bit about, you know, kind of how it's the same and different from the Brain 8, where we are and where we're going with online publishing.
Sure. So as soon as you sync your brain to the cloud, it is online and available through the browser. Let me go ahead and open up the browser here. And if you go to thebrain.com, you can click the login button. That's going to take you to the web application. And when you log in, you're going to see your brains there. And once you've got your brains here, you can click on them and open them, of course, just like you'd expect. But one of the other things that you can do is actually share them through here. So in this case, my brain is not public, so I can't share it with anybody. But if it was public, then all you have to do is just copy the URL, and you can send that URL off to other people, right? If somebody goes to this URL, of course, it won't do anything because it's going to say, hey, that's not, you're not allowed to access that. But if I do set that brains public, then that URL would be something that other people can utilize. And another cool little thing that we've added is that when you have a brain that's public, maybe this one, you can go ahead and say embed brain, and it's going to give you a little bit of HTML code, and you can copy and paste that into your own website, and that'll show your brain right inside your site if you want to kind of share it on your site instead of sending people a link.
Oh, how many people are going to be asking for that Game of Thrones brain after this session? Can I count them on my hand? All right, anyway. And actually, a few asked for your brain. Unfortunately, Harlan's brain is not available for sharing other than when we talk to him through the webinars, through public. That being said, we do have some fabulous brains on innovation and a number of template brains. Feel free to email me, but I did get a couple emails as well as questions in the Q&A if your brain was available. You know, that's proprietary information. So, but feel free to, you know, Harlan's on discussion boards. You know, he takes, you know, you can get escalated to talk to Harlan occasionally and support. So feel free to chat with us through our website and discussion boards, and stay tuned. And we're a very customer-led organization, and we're all pretty accessible. So we really enjoy talking to you, and you can pick his actual brain, and his digital brain remains on his computer. And then speaking of that, actually George from UK mentioned that he's on a Mac, and then a couple people were asking me about sort of your tools and your setup. And then along that line of thought, and just to add to that question, Tom was asking, does Harlan use the brain for task management, or does he use another task management program? So if you want to talk about what you use the brain for, and if you have any other tools that you use with it, and what your computer setup is. Like, for instance, you're on a Mac today, which is fabulous. Our Mac users must be happy, because I'm always presenting on PC, and Matt goes, I guess, either way. And you know, what mobile devices you sync to. Maybe talk a little bit about what tools you're using in conjunction with the brain, or just the brain.
Sure. Well, in terms of my kind of task management and stuff like that, I do everything inside the brain. You know, as a development organization, we have a database of bugs and so forth. So I guess you'd have to call that task management also, but it's not really well, it's not really task management. It's more like a list of problems.
Getting things done, right?
Yeah. So you know, other than our bug tracking system, all of my task management is done inside the brain. You can see I've got a thought here called hit list. That's one of the things that I use to kind of stay on top of things. And I have a notes in there on the next things that I want to do. as well as connected thoughts, which have kind of different areas that I want to focus on. I sort of try not to organize my life as a checklist. I've got a lot of freedom in terms of sort of how I operate, just because of the way my life is organized. Some people don't have that freedom, of course, but as you can see, my calendar is not full of stuff, and that's the way I like it. I've kind of made a conscious decision to kind of try and keep things that way. But you know, if that's not an option for you, of course, you know, there are events and reminders and all that stuff inside the brain. But yeah, for me, I don't need anything else. I don't like to do that kind of stuff. And I've got all my reminders and checklists and kind of long-term goals and things like that, all inside my brain. In terms of my hardware setup, I do tend to use a Mac for the vast majority of my stuff. I'm running now on a MacBook Pro with the touch bar, which I don't recommend if you can avoid getting a touch bar. I'm not a fan. But I tend to use it usually connected up to my my external display. I've got a 4K display that I use that lets me have my brain nice and big and still have all my other information available on screen. I do also have a Windows machine that I use where I've got my brain synced up over there. And then, of course, I've got my phone, which I use my brain on quite a bit. I have an iPad also. I find I don't use it quite as much as I used to, because now my brain is so much more reliable on my phone that it's just like, it's always there, it's always with me. So in terms of other software that I use, trying to think if there's anything interesting that that I use that other people might want to hear about. You know, I use, of course, software for writing software, development environments and things like that, and then you know, graphics programs and other things like that. But in terms of kind of organizing things, it's all on my brain.
All right, very good. I've learned something very important. If you want to invent the next generation of something, keep your calendar open. This is a very interesting. So you really, you're thinking about your ideas and designing and taking control of your destiny. So take control of your information and your calendar to get things done and invent the stuff. That's a very cool little tidbit. And I think with that, wow, we are on very generous. Thank you so much. And thanks to you users for all the fabulous questions. We tried to get to as many of them as we can. Do join us again for events. If you have any burning questions, you know, write into support. We'll get your answer, and join Matt's session on Friday. It's a fabulous session. Before we end the session today, though, Harlan, any final words of wisdom or anything else you'd like to say as far as the our spotlight on the brain technology today with you?
You know, nothing in particular, but you know, I do want to say thank you to everyone for all your support over the years. I know some of our users have been with us for 20 years, or even 10 years. It's a very, very long time to be using one piece of software. And
even a year is a long time.
Yeah.
In this environment.
We're happy to have been, you know, your chosen way of organizing your information, and we don't take that responsibility lightly. So, you know, thanks again, and you know, you can look forward to a lot more, you know, a lot more development and improvements in the future. You know, we've got so much more planned ahead, and we can't wait to share it with you.
All right, great. Well, thank you, everyone, and happy anniversary to you, because as we said in our email and on Twitter, this anniversary, 20th, isn't just the brain or Harlan's, it's an anniversary. The date we chose was because it was when it was publicly released to you. So happy anniversary to all you brain users. And we look forward to hearing more about your brains and seeing on future events. Thanks, everyone. We're going to close today's session. There will be a recording, so we'll have that posted probably tomorrow, so you can fast forward it on anything or go back to what you need. And we look forward to seeing you again. And thank you, Harlan, Matt, and we're going to end today's session. It was very productive. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.